Hey guys, Brett Weiss here. So Christmas is just a couple of days away, but boy, did I already get an amazing Christmas present. This video is a little different today. It's going to be about an amazing comic book pickup I had. As you know, I love video games, but also love comic books and other related aspects of geek culture and popular culture and all that kind of stuff. So I got a phone call the other day from my good friend Pam. Now, I went to high school with her, didn't really know her that well then, but I've gotten to know her pretty well since. And she works at our church and she answers the phones and things like that. So the other day, she just sort of got a random phone call and picked it up. It was an older gentleman on the phone and he said, "Hey, I've got a bunch of comic books and they're just, in a suitcase. They're just collecting dust or whatever, or just sitting there, not doing anybody any good. I'm just looking for someone to give them to." Now he said that he knew that there was some value in older comic books, but he didn't really want to take them somewhere to sell or work, hassle with getting them appraised or anything. And he said, they're just some old comic books, pretty well worn. He just wanted to give them somebody that might enjoy them. And so Pam called me because she knew I was a comic book collector. And, that was really nice of her to do that. It was very thoughtful of her. And so I called this gentleman and he explained the situation to me. He said he had those comic books. He's had them for a very long time. He didn't know exactly what he had anymore even. He said he knew there were, Disney's and some Archie comics and things like that. Maybe some superheroes. He didn't really know. He just, he hadn't even looked at them in a while. And I said, "Oh, yeah, sure, I'd love to have them." So he left them up at the church, and my wife works at the church in the, AV booth. And so he took him up to the church, dropped him off in the booth there, and she brought him home in this just old broken suitcase. And so it was exciting because it was basically like Christmas come early, and so I didn't get my hopes up really high. Okay, so I didn't think, oh, there's going to be some really key issues for my collection. I'm going to be able to fill some holes, maybe just some real valuable stuff. This is going to be awesome. I lowered my expectations because you never know about this thing. Most people don't preserve their comics in bags, and it's, these are older comics, are probably going to be pretty worn out. If it's mostly Archies and Disney's, there's not going to be a ton of valuable stuff or whatever. I had no idea what to expect, but I lowered my expectations quite a bit. So I brought the suitcase into my living room, and I'm just sort of I feel like a kid. There's a little anticipation. It reminds me of one time when my dad, years ago, he told me he had a box in our garage, from when he was a kid, and there might be some comic books in there, and it was on a Friday, and he said, "We'll open them tomorrow morning." I was like, "Oh, no, Dad, please, let's open them tonight." And he said, "No, we'll do it tomorrow morning." And so, okay, so I could barely sleep on that Friday night. Anyway, long story short, the next morning, I opened the box. It was just a bunch of old junk, no comics. But there were comics in this suitcase, many years later that this older gentleman had given me. And so, I go to the living room and my wife and son are in there. They're kind of curious as well. And so I open this suitcase and on the top, there are just tons of coverless comic books. Because back in the day, and now even, I believe, newsstand comic books that are just in regular stores, when they don't sell, the person that runs the store, the manager, owner, whatever, will rip the cover off, or the worker, and send it back to the publisher, for credit. And the comic books that are coverless are supposed to be thrown away. That's what you're supposed to do with them. But there's some backroom deals and things where coverless comics are kept. So I don't know why this guy had so many coverless comic books. He may have just bought them from somebody, or they were maybe given to him or something. And it's funny. I opened this suitcase. And about the majority, everything on top even, was just coverless brown comics, just, worthless and not even worth reading. I don't like reading coverless comic books because you always feel like you're missing part of the story. If you don't have the cover, even though you're not missing actually part of the story, it just feels like an incomplete reading process for some reason. And so I just see all these coverless comics on top, and I'm like, okay. And like I said, I didn't get my hopes up too high. So I was like, it's a bummer, but it is what it is, no harm, no foul. It was free. The man was nice enough to at least not go throw them in the dumpster and, just at least, give somebody, I've been a comic book fan since I was a kid, reading, everything from Archie to Superman to Flash to Spider-Man. I've always loved comics. Had a comic book store in the 90s, a couple of them actually, with my brother-in-law. Anyway, big comic book fan, so I was happy to get these freebies. But it looked like it was just going to be junk and all go, straight to the trash. So I picked up, the top layer, pretty thick layer of comics in the suitcase, set them aside, and saw the bottom layer, pretty thick layer. See, I've got some stacks here. Were comics with covers, and they were pretty well worn. Most of them are in good condition, which means pretty well worn. Some of them are in poor, whatever. They're free. They'll be fun reading copies. I can just have a stack of them anywhere in the bathroom, for example, because I don't have to worry about keeping them in mint condition or anything like that. I can just read them and have fun. So I started looking through, and there were indeed lots of, Disney comics, things like Tom and Jerry. There were some movie tie-ins, was pretty neat. Captain Sinbad here. And, I really like Walt Disney comics and stories. Very readable. Love the Carl Barks stuff, especially, as everyone does. And there was definitely some superhero stuff, too. Big fan of the Flash. I have a full Flash collection, so I don't really need this one. But anyway, it's neat to have. Good reading copy. Things like Elmer Fudd, the Warner Brothers stuff. More Walt Disney's comics and stories. Again, very readable condition. Be a lot of fun to go through these. Tweety and Sylvester. What I'll probably end up doing with a lot of these every year on Halloween, I give away comics in addition to candy. A lot of kids love the comics. I like to set up out front and, give away free comics, and what I do is I play old movie trailers on a VHS, and the kids like to come up and see this, especially the little kids. They're really intrigued by the spooky movie trailers, like the old Universal and Hammer films. So a lot of these are going to go in my supply to give away for Halloween. And I got so many comics that this will probably last a couple of Halloweens, maybe 2 or 3. And let's see, Shaggy Dog, remember things like that. So anyway, stacks and stacks of that. So in a minute, I'm going to get to the really good find of the collection here. Action Comics, an old 12-cent issue. Most of the stuff in here is Silver Age. My favorite Martian, if you remember that old TV show, I believe Ray Walston. Yeah, Ray Walston was the Martian. There's some Archie Christian comics, which is kind of interesting. Archie actually licensed their comic books to a Christian company, and you had the same type of art, and similar stories, but with, more of a moral lesson and Christian angle and that kind of thing, which was kind of interesting. Bonanza, really neat. I remember watching, when I was a kid, I liked the Rifleman and the Lone Ranger. Those almost seemed like superhero shows because, you had this good guy that would go around doing these good deeds. Even Lone Ranger had, a mask and everything. Didn't care for Bonanza too much. It just seemed kind of corny, but kind of neat to see that. Did get some more superhero comics, Detective, Batman and Flash, and another semi-key issue that I got in this collection, other than the one I'm about to show you, is the first Superman and Flash race. This is a key issue. Again, it's in good condition, so it's not going to be worth a ton, but it's very cool. It's a great reading copy, and that's pretty neat. Now, one more I want to show you before we get to the big reveal, or when I show you this really cool issue. Jerry Lewis. Now, Bob Hope and Jerry Lewis, there were comics published by DC featuring those classic comedians, which is kind of neat. Now, here you go. I was on the floor showing, going through these comics on the floor of my living room with, my wife and son around. And so I'm thumbing through it, see what there is. And I was like, holy cow, when I saw this, Batman number 181. And as you comic book fans know, that's Poison Ivy on the cover. And this features her origin and first appearance. The very first appearance of Poison Ivy, who really got popular later on. Now, this is a Silver Age issue, 12-cent issue. It was published June of 1966. That was a little over a year before I was even born. So it's really old, obviously. And so that's just super awesome to see this. I'm a big Poison Ivy fan. I don't have this in my collection. Excellent find, great score, and it's in good condition. And as opposed to fine or mint or near mint. But anyway, I'm not going to complain. It's it's intact and it's in nice condition. And what's really cool, the pinup in this issue. Now, most comics didn't have pinups, but some did. And the very cool pinup by Carmine Infantino is intact. Excellent. I might even use this issue. I might even maybe kind of flatten this out and frame this issue. It's so neat. But I don't want to damage it. But either way, you know, first appearance of Poison Ivy. Now, when she came out, she wasn't like, you know, in league with the Joker, the Riddler, or anything like that for a very long time until the Batman animated series in the 90s. She got really popular on that cartoon, and she just got more and more popular. You know, the adventures with her and Ivy. I mean, Harley and Ivy, you know, Poison Ivy obviously here. Well, she would hang out and, you know, sort of Thelma and Louise type adventures with Harley Quinn, you know, the Joker's girlfriend. So Poison Ivy has gotten really popular over the years. As a matter of fact, any comic book of any size convention that you go to, any comic book show, and even a lot of video game and anime shows, you will see Poison Ivy cosplayers everywhere. She is a super popular character and just seems to get more popular as time goes on. You know, if she wears poison on her lips, and you know that will knock out or kill or whatever her, you know, her enemy or whatever. She'll seduce heroes, and she's definitely, and she's kind of a sympathetic villain because she's, you know, really she's sort of an eco-terrorist in a sense, and obviously there's no sympathy for terrorists, but there are some you know, episodes of the animated series, Batman the Animated Series, and some comic books where she's sort of shown in a semi-positive light. But anyway, she has a method and a motive for what she does, and she thinks she's doing the right thing in many cases. But anyway, ultimately she's a villain, but she's a very cool villain, a very popular one, very nicely drawn one. I really like Poison Ivy. Anyway, just a great score. And a great thank you again, Pam, for, you know, alerting me to this collection, and the older gentleman, I forgot his name, but thanks for, you know, just giving away this collection to someone that collects comic books and that are going to, you know, really make good use of them. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for liking. Thank you for subscribing. Christmas is upon us, so the new Tales from a Retro Gamer episode will probably be maybe a day or two or a few days late, but whatever. But anyway, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Thank you so much, guys, for liking this video. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. I really appreciate it. We will talk to you guys later. Peace out.